I'm Gary Stark. I've been working in television locally all my adult life. And I've been a fan of Ozzie and Harriet all of my life because I was just a toddler when the show premiered. And so I don't have a lot of memories of the first few years of the show. But that was one show I never missed, and had a number of friends that were the same, and we just followed everything. And here we are today.
And I'm Sue Stark, and basically the same. I grew up, and I was a big fan of Ricky Nelson. I couldn't wait till the show came on when he would sing, and he's been part of my life.
I'm definitely the TV baby. I mean, believe it or not, because I was born in 1948, and we had a television set right from the very beginning. And, I was the kid who, ate lunch and dinner in front of the TV. We never had family dinners, not because we didn't like each other, just because that's the way it always was. Then when I got older, I knew all my life I wanted to be in television, and I did some radio, and then I got a summer job at the ABC station in Cleveland as an announcer. And that was 42 years ago, and I'm still there. And I'm program director, and I also do some research, and we're still an ABC affiliate.
The shows that were on in the 50s were, it was family, and it was the way they were structured, and it was just like a fantasy world almost. Everyone wanted to be, even nowadays, even in this century, everyone still refers to Ozzie and Harriet. They basically had the life everybody wanted. It was amazing.
The terrific thing about working at the television station is that, especially in the pre-satellite days, stars would come through all the time because they would come in from the network to do interviews and things like that. And Ozzie had just written his biography and came in to do an interview, and I went to meet him. I made sure I was down there and talked to him and everything, and immediately warmed up to each other. And I kept in touch with Ozzie, and then he got ill, and so that's how I started getting more closer with David and Harriet, because I would correspond with them. So when I went out to California, I had contacted Harriet, and I let her know we were coming, or I was coming. I think it was before Sue went out there. And she invited me to come down to Laguna and see everything, and that was great. I just like the fact that, well, number one, it was funny. The fact that Ozzie was really so multi-talented between writing and producing and directing. There's a uniqueness in the way some shows are done where the situations always would come back at the end of the show and either be a joke or reveal something. It wasn't just a bunch of little disconnected situations. In fact, sometimes you wouldn't even see it coming, and then there it would be at the very end in the tag of the show, and it's like if you hadn't watched the whole show, you would have no idea what they're talking about, but if you did, it was always great. So that was something that just, kept me coming back every week. And of course, then once Rick was singing and all that, it was, to see, what song was going to be on.
Well, basically, I watched your family. I watched the changes, them getting married, and in fact, I remember the day that your parents got married. I was walking down the street with my transistor radio, and they said Ricky Nelson got married, and I remember sitting down on this curb and crying. Because I think every woman in the world was, every girl in the world was in love with your dad. He was a teen idol.
What I found, what was interesting was that when the show transitioned from radio to television, it changed a lot, because the radio show was really, it was very more based in comedy in the sense of a lot of audience reaction and everything. So the TV show was really much more subdued than the radio show, because the radio show also had music in it from big band era and all that.
I think the people, basically, because they were so you could, it was something to believe in, it was, because, people have a lot of stress in their everyday life, and they always seem so happy and so upbeat and so positive.
Yeah, it was special because of the family being a real family, because there were a lot of similar in concept shows at the time, but this was the only one that was, the real family. Ozzie was basically way ahead of his time in terms of things that he came up with, just the fact of launching Rick's career and all those things, and obviously a great deal maker. And in fact, there was a guy named Cleveland Amory, who used to write for TV Guide, and he did an editorial once on Ozzie, and the title of the editorial was "The Wizardry of Oz," and it was a whole article about how this guy is really a genius, in the way he's able to put the show on and write and produce and all that. So I think that helped make the show very enduring, because of the fact that there was this, it was very tightly knit, and it was very relatable. Well, all the music in the show had an impact on me, because it was very, because the theme and everything, which all went back to the radio show, was always something that was very recognizable. And in fact, David had loaned me a couple tapes that I could dub off that had all the original music without all the talking on it and stuff, from the Kodak Opens and all that kind of stuff. And also had on it, even though this is slightly off track, the laugh, because, except in the very early years, there was basically one laugh that was used throughout the whole series, which apparently came from one of the radio shows. But then when Rick started singing, the impact for me was that you always wanted to see what he was going to sing. Sometimes it would be integrated into the story, sometimes it would be a tag at the end, sometimes he'd do 2 songs, sometimes he would only do 1, sometimes he wouldn't do any. So it was kind of, you had to wait and see. Well, my happiest memory is being able to meet and have, and stay in touch with them as people. But I just always felt like that these were genuine people, and that The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet was truly an adventure.
I think it takes us back to a simpler time, something that we try to recapture, and time gone by, and things that people would like to see more of. It's just such a fast-paced world, so much technology, and nobody takes the time to sit down and talk. Probably the only one that I know that still sends postcards when I go on vacation, and birthday cards and things like that. It's just a much simpler time, and I think, a lot of times when you think about it, what we've lost, that we'd like to get back.
And the Nelsons were like the core, and then you had, Father Knows Best, and Donna Reed, and Leave It to Beaver, and My Three Sons, and all these shows
great shows
that were similar in the sense that they were all family, but there was nothing like the Nelsons, who were truly a family.
America's family.
America's favorite family. No, so I think David's company was Casablanca or something like that, Productions, and so he was telling me a lot about the show. He was telling me about the storage area where all the shows were. But David had said how the 35 millimeter prints, that there were 2 sets of them, and one set had gone to KTLA in LA because they wanted 35, and the deal was they were supposed to always put them back together because they were going to edit them for time, and he said in most cases they didn't, so he had these cut up 35 millimeter prints, so that's why it was so hard to do any kind of decent re-releases of the show, because of the condition of the prints. But he did say, he said the negatives are all there and all the spools and everything else. Well, there's a few websites I look at. I don't look at all of them. And TV shows on DVD.com is one. And there was this little thing that said something about Sam Nelson wants to get the Ozzie and Harriet show. And I clicked on it. And, the article was kind of like, we just heard about this and we thought we'd, bring it to your attention. And it was then that I said, geez, it's a good thing that I looked at this, because this is not something that had just started that day. It had already been, going on for a while. And I could have just as easily, missed this entirely. I mean, like I said, once I saw that, there was no question we were going to do as much as we could, because this is something that I've been hoping would happen, years and years and years ago. It's still ongoing. Just knowing that this was being done by someone in the family, by someone who really cared and said, hey, this is something we have to protect. And that's why, I've said before, and I'm still saying, that anything we can do to make sure this thing comes across the way you intend it to do, that's what we want to do, because it's something I want to be able to, pass on to everyone.
To our kids.
Yeah. It makes me feel terrific, because,
Good.
I was disappointed in the Shout Factory releases because of the quality of most of the prints. And all the unauthorized ones that are out there are worse. And every time I see one of these Ozzie and Harriet things listed, I immediately look at the reviews, and it'll say something like, the show's great, but the picture's terrible, and and I'm thinking, well, I'm not going to buy this. First of all, I don't want to give money to the people that aren't doing it legitimately, but at the same time, there was nothing else, out there. Now that all these other shows have been re-released in pristine versions, Father Knows Best, Donna Reed, all of them, even Dennis the Menace. I'm thinking, well, where the heck?
Yeah, where's Ozzie?
This should have been done, a long time ago. Yeah, I just think, all of the other shows that have endured and they've been brought back and they still have a following, and this is just the show that's deserved to be in that.
Yes. Yeah. This is the one that's, this is like the missing link.
Right.
It needs to be in there.
And my favorite, because Harriet autographed this for me, which was an Ozzie and Harriet comic book when we visited her. These are some of the episodes that I bought over the years. This stuff is some of his other stuff, but I've still got more over at my dad's house. Are some of the features that, Here Come the Nelsons, a 16 print, and then High Good Lookin', Honeymoon Lodge, and Strictly in the Groove are all movies that they made in the 40s. In fact, when Ozzie was very ill, I sent one of these, and there was no VHS then yet. So David got a projector, and they showed it to him in the bedroom. He sent me a letter about it. And then here's a print of Love and Kisses.